Hey, so to talk about the throat chakra one-on-one. So the throat chakra allows us to speak and express, and if this chakra is open and healthy, we're able to do that clearly, okay? Our throat chakra is actually the center of communication for us. It's the center of sound. It's the center of the vibration in our body. And also, interestingly, this is the center of truth for us, right? This is the part where our body is able to express itself, right? To expand. This is also the part of the body where we're able to receive that same level of expression from others. So not only do we put out, but we also intake from this part of our body. And so if you have a strong throat chakra, usually you have a clear voice that's very, a clear sense of communication that's very attractive, right? It's said. Doesn't mean that it has to be that way, but usually you'll have a very open, strong throat chakra that brings these qualities out in you. And this could also be expressed in writing as well, being able to draw or being able to just express yourself, right? Like it's being clever, using the correct words at the perfect time, right? Punchline, right? It's that kind of communication. It could also entail like musical abilities as well. However, we're very creative nowadays, right? There's so much creativity, it's crazy. So however you translate your expressions and your expressiveness outward, that would be coming from the throat chakra, right? And how you do it also has a lot to do with this chakra as well. Like I was talking about the perfect timing, how you execute, coming in at the right specific moment at the right time with the perfect thing to say, right? It's like punchline energy. So that's the workings of the throat chakra, right? For some reason that's sticking in my mind, that perfect timing. And then it helps us to be good listeners as well. That also comes from our throat chakra as well, being a good listener, being able to not only just listen, but also being able to understand what's being said. Comprehension, right, is an important part of listening, not just the physical part, but the mental processing, understanding what's being said. And it's the chakra that offers that level of discernment so that we can hear what's being said, not just with our physical ears, but it's the internalizing of the energy of that's coming towards us in the form of communication that's being heard and being decoded, right? So we can process it and internalize it and understand it, turn it into something that means something to us, right? It's what's happening below the surface of communication that's taking place. That's that you not only just understand what's being said as well, even to take it a step further, but you can actually even be able to understand what's meant. So even intention can be perceived through the throat chakra, which is just blows my mind, right? And so it's almost like metaphoric or figurative language, and being able to like decode that and understand or overstand. They love to use that too. And it's pulling all of that in and being able to sense the truth of it. And this is also tapping into you being able to understand and hear spirit as well, not just other physical beings, but this is also the connection with spirit as well. And so the throat chakra, the fifth chakra, is actually considered the first of the spirit chakras. So the top 3 chakras have a lot to do with our ethereal properties in our body. And there's controversy on whether or not we're able to even open this chakra without having some level of assistance or coaching, right? Some people feel like you need to have that in order to properly open this chakra. Others feel like you may not need to have that, like we can naturally open it, or it'll naturally open in the right time, right? I don't know how I feel about that. I think I'm going to go with the second option, that you can naturally open that chakra, or whenever it's time. I feel like there's something that happens to trigger that opening automatically. I feel like some people have a throat chakra that opens very young in age, right? That's why I'm going with that second option. They develop a very strong throat chakra. And I feel like that could have a lot to do with, for younger people, the environment that they're in, or certain things that may be available to them at a young age. Maybe things that they had access to growing up. But anyhow, some people feel like that there is a need to be guided to open this up, which I can definitely understand, because it's such a valuable and it's such a sensitive and important part of the chakras. I mean, we're talking about the most deepest part of our being, and so we're talking about the upper 3 parts, right? Which can be very weighty. The heart, the throat, the third eye, and the crown. The very, very significant parts of our chakra system. And so it's very different than the lower ones, which are kind of plain and straightforward. It deals with stability. The upper chakras actually deal with, internal processes, the mind, the realm of vibration and visualizations, and of course the intuition, even thought, that's the most deepest parts of our being. So I guess I can understand why people would feel like it needs a little bit more attention, right, as we're delving into it. And the upper 3 are very specific as well, and get more detailed about the information that's being revealed. We're talking about what is said, what is seen, what is imagined, what is thought. All of those actions are reflected in our upper 3 chakras, and it starts with this 5th chakra, the throat chakra. It starts as this internal vibration, and which is expressed through, one of the ways it's expressed is through words and symbols and music. It could be expressed through hand gestures and expressions, any way that you can think of how we communicate with our outside world, right? It involves this chakra. So the throat chakra, our 5th chakra, is called Vishuddha in Sanskrit, and it translates as purity or purification. The sound or the mantra is hung, right? The traditional element of this chakra is ether, right? The meaning of ether is the void, or the place where nothing is, or space, right? And I guess in yogic thought, it was guesstimated that pure sound vibration is where the void came from. I guess I'll have an aha moment about that. But it said that the original sound thought originates from within the universe. through the symbol Om. So it could be OM or AUM. However, others say that just simply it refers to sound when referencing the throat chakra or the fifth chakra, right? So it depends on how deep you want to get with that word Om. When we talk about Hinduism and the sacred symbol Om, it represents in their religion the source of all creation, this omnipotence. And according to Hindu thought, the sound Om actually encompasses past, present, and future. And it was the original vibration that created the universe, right? In our terms, we would say it was the Big Bang, I guess. And that sound is often used as a mantra in meditation or prayer. And it's thought to be like the intonation to penetrate the soul is what is believed in Hindu religion. It penetrates the soul. You know, the color for this chakra is blue, like a sky blue, turquoise, water blue. The traditional lotus flower has 16 petals around the lotus flower. And again, the mantra is hung, H-A-N-G, but it's pronounced like song. So it's hung. And this mantra is said to activate and energize this chakra when you chant it, right? And of course, it's called the throat chakra. So we know where it's at, right? It's here in the throat area. And it actually encompasses a lot up in this area of the body. So we have the neck here. We have this upper chest area. It radiates around the jawline here, around the mouth, even around the ears and the collarbone here as well. Internally, we're talking about, you know, structures that it's associated with from the inside, right? And so that would be like the thyroid here. I think that the thyroid is along here. Well, there's many different areas. The thyroid, the esophagus, also the parathyroid, and some of the nerves in this area as well. The words got really long, and so I'm not even going to try to pronounce them. Some of those things I've never even heard of, honestly, but they're associated with this throat chakra in some way or another. And so what does it mean to talk, right? What does it mean when we utter words, when we speak? So when we talk, what is happening is there is a vibration made right here in the throat chakra. Imagine something just vibrating. And in this area, there's actually that vibration that comes out of the mouth, right? It starts as a vibration, but it ends up traveling up through the mouth and comes out as sounds. And these sounds are things, of course, right, that are commonly understood to symbolize things, just like I'm speaking words. And these words are made up of symbols that are known to those that are listening, right? It's all about symbols, right? Including speaking symbols and writing symbols and even sign symbols for those that know how to sign. You know, I don't know how to sign, but I know it's a lot of finger gesturing going on. All of this, even the hand signs, would start in the throat chakra. This is where we begin to grasp the idea around one thing representing something else, right? And it's translated, that thing is translated in the throat chakra. This is so interesting. And so there's the common understanding of this type of symbolism. And I guess there's no easy or no simpler way to say it, but you know, I can't imagine how frustrating and how irritable it would be to have to exist in a world where there is no language, right? Like there's no spoken word. Imagine how frustrating and difficult and overly exertive that would be. And if you've ever had laryngitis and you've been sick, like you understand the frustration, right? You know the struggle. And it's definitely, laryngitis is definitely a fifth chakra issue. It's some type of infection that happens in the throat. And for those of you that have had it, you know what I mean. And the reason why it's so frustrating is because how else is someone supposed to know like what you need unless you speak it? Unless you say what it is that you want, right? How are we supposed to know? Closed mouths don't get fed. That's a saying, right? And we all know what that means. It needs to be expressed in one way or the other. And the voice, this voice as where we express, right, comes from the throat chakra. And the quality of this chakra says a lot about the state of the chakra. The quality of the voice, excuse me, says a lot about the state of this chakra. And so some examples of that would be like a timid, shy, shaky, cracking, weak voice could indicate, I say could indicate a blocked chakra, while a loud, boisterous, overpowering voice could indicate an overloaded chakra. And so I guess it would be important to understand that the condition of our voice isn't necessarily our fault, right? It's not anybody's fault, like what the quality of the voice is, but it's just a basic reflection again of what's going on inside of this energy center, if that makes sense, which in turn is a reflection of what's going on inside of us, right? You with me? Okay. Now, when this chakra is strong, when it's healthy and open, the tone will be clear. It's said that the tone will be clear. The tone will be pure. It will be resonant, and it actually will be very alluring and attractive and also pleasing to the ear. People will enjoy listening to you speak, and they'll be able to understand what it is that you're saying, unless they have, the person listening has their own fifth chakra issues going on, right? That's the exception. So this chakra actually determines your ability to communicate well, to communicate your thoughts and your intentions clearly. And just as importantly, it reflects the ability to listen. Not only to listen, but also to understand the expressed thoughts and intentions of the other person that's talking as well, or communicating. And so it's two-sided, right? It's two-sided. It's communicating, and it's also being able to listen and understand. So I guess a good question would be to ask ourselves, like, when I was younger, what was that like? When I was younger, was I in a family that believed that it was appropriate to be quiet? You know, did you grow up in an era where children were seen and not heard? You know, would be a good question to ask myself. Is that the type of home that I grew up in? Or was the home filled with lots of activity? And what type of activity was it? Was it talking? Was it noisy? Was it yelling? Voices of expression? Were those expression a result of disappointment and anger, right? And so how was I raised to use my voice? Or how was I raised to not use my voice? Is actually some of the important questions that we can ask ourselves to determine the health of the fifth chakra and understand how that plays a part in the health of the fifth chakra as it is right now. And so for those who were discouraged, not just from talking, but also discouraged from telling the truth, or for those who were told lies often, you know, you might find that those are people that have throat chakra issues as adults, right? It makes sense. And if you want to heal that or get better around understanding how to feel the state of your own throat chakra, all you have to do is just take a moment, you know, tune into your body and recognize, you know, how talking, listening, and the telling of truth were handled, you know, in your childhood home. That might give indications, right? It doesn't have to start with home. This is throughout your whole life. It's analyzing that. And so let me ask you a question, and it's a simple question. So how do you listen? Do you know how to listen? Or when you're engaged in a conversation, do you just listen and wait for the moment that you get to talk? Say you're in the middle of a conversation and you're asked to consider a question. Are you waiting for that moment to talk? And while you're waiting, you're not really giving thought to what's being said, though, right? You'd be surprised how many of us just sit and wait for the opportunity to talk. You know, just looking at how loud and boisterous the world is, that's the reflection that's happening during conversation. And it makes sense, right? It's actually hard to even get a word in many times when the conversations are going on. It's normally many times a one-sided conversation being dominated by one person. And I guess during those times, sometimes during the conversation, it could be easier just to focus rather than getting your own words out, right? Focusing on letting others get theirs out could be easier. However, despite all of that, the skill of knowing how to listen is actually a really important one. It's important. And if you consciously try to balance, one of the things we can do is we can consciously try to balance the words that we take in with the words that we let out. So set a conscious intention when you're conversating to keep the conversation balanced. So for the words that you let out, balance that with the words that you take in, right? And when you do that, it's said that, you know, you may find that you feel more calmer, and you may find that you feel more centered as well. You may even have a better understanding of what's going on around you, of your environment, right? And so try it and see how that works for you. Not only that, listening is a crucial part of just being as well. You know, not only being a good friend, but also being a good listener. And that could be for a family member as well. I don't want to leave that out. Or a partner as well. It's also a good way to tap into our intuition, which supports the health of the 6th chakra, the one coming after the throat chakra, which is the 3rd eye. So it's kind of like understanding that we're climbing the ladder here as we're positioning and opening up these chakra systems. It's climbing the ladder of overall balance, right? And so it's going to position us to be able to then work on the 3rd eye chakra, which governs intuition primarily, right? This taps into it, but it prepares us for the real deal when it comes to intuition, right? And listening, basically, it's letting us know is actually a pretty big deal. And the only thing that we have to do is just stop talking and, long enough to pay attention. It could change the whole dynamic of, sitting in that moment during a conversation. And it should, if you already are not practicing these things. And so aside from that, the throat chakra is also called the chakra of truth, because it's also the place where we speak our truth, right? It's coming straight from the heart. And we also are able to discern the truth that others are offering to us when they speak or when they do something, right? This is really, it's powerful. It's a powerful skill. And it's actually one that we all have. It's not just given to certain people. We're born with it. Everybody has it. The thing is, we all have it, but not everybody uses it, right? Maybe there's just a realization that they don't know, that they have it. But when we suppress our truth, it weakens this skill, right? And when I say suppressing truth, maybe that would look like not really saying what we mean, or refusing to acknowledge something true about self. It often causes a block in the throat chakra when we do that consciously. And in order to keep this chakra open and strong, time has to be put in to discover, what truth really is for each one of us. It's going to look different for everybody. When I stand in my truth, it's going to look different than, when my sister stands in her truth. And then spending time listening to what's being said, both internally from us and then also from others, including, again, the meaning behind those words and the meaning between the words. And then next thing you know, once we start giving detail to that, then we can hear others' truths as well, not only just ours. All we have to do is just sit back and listen. Just sit back and listen. And one way that we can actually hear the truth behind people's words is to attune not only to what is said, but also how it's being said. There are those who study language or study communication. They study nonverbal communication. And it's said that nonverbal cues tell us more about the actual words that people say. It's the nonverbal part of the communication that's giving us clues about what people are saying. And there's actually studies that have been done around this that actually estimate that up to about 91% of communication is actually nonverbal, right? Like I'm communicating with my hands here. I love to communicate with my hands, but you can actually begin your own study. It's really simple. You can begin your own study of nonverbal communication as well. All you have to do is start observing facial expressions, right? And start observing postures, and start observing what people do with their hands and what they're doing with their feet as they're talking, right? Interesting, isn't it? And so we can also look at how they're standing or how they're sitting, look at which way they lean and where their gaze falls, right? For example, it's said that people tend to lean towards things that interest them. And then when there's something that they fear or something that they don't like, they tend to back up off of it, right? They tend to blink a lot and don't look people directly in the eyes when they're fudging the truth, or they're kind of trying to get around saying what they need to say. Additionally, they tend to move more when they're nervous, and they move less when they're engaged in something. So try it out and see how it works. Start your own little study on yourself and on others, and watch closely and see what it is that you observe as you watch what people do, and whether it does or does not match with what they are saying, right? So take a closer look at, what your eyes and what your hands, what your feet, what your body is doing, when you talk. And let's not forget about the vibration and the rhythm around communicating, and the third chakra. That's also part of the fifth chakra, is rhythm and vibration. Those with the healthy throat chakra can many times have nice singing voices. That doesn't mean that they are going to go and win on, American Idol. That's not what I'm saying. Right? But they can actually be those that can carry a good tone or keep a good rhythm, keep the beat to something, Again, doesn't mean they're going to go out and be a superstar of any kind, but generally people with open throat chakras tend to really engage with, singing and movement and enjoy it, even if they only sing in the shower, or if they only sing in the car on the way to where they're going. People with strong fifth chakras might have very strong, very unusual, sonorous, or memorable voices. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be like the voice of, the status quo type of thing, like everybody's gonna like it, right? That's not what I'm saying. It's going to be more to do with this distinctive quality or an interesting tone, right? And then there are those who are tone deaf and who can't seem to hear rhythms or keep a good beat. They can't seem to hear the tune or find the right tune, right? They're said to actually have a blocked throat chakra, is what it said. This is so interesting to me, right? As a musician, it's like, oh, okay, wow, right? It's interesting because we know that the whole universe is made of vibration. Like everything that we look at, there's a vibration, usually associated with it. And music has proven to be one of the most beautiful and poignant ways that we shape and celebrate, vibrationally. We always add music to everything that we do. And music, especially for me, I'd be the first to admit that it's wonderful, wonderful therapy. Like, there's always a piece of music that can embellish, the mood that I'm in. For blocked chakras, though, and overloaded chakras, if you find that you have one of those issues, you may think about listening or playing some music at least once a day, right? Sometime during the day. It can definitely serve as medicine for this chakra, for the fifth chakra or the throat chakra. And so, though it's true, though, that the second chakra, which is our sacral chakra, is very significant when it comes to this creativity that we have just flowing naturally on the inside of us. But the fifth chakra, the throat chakra, is what houses that creativity as well, right? Music actually comes from here, right? This is eye-opening for me. Even as I'm learning this chakra, it comes from the throat chakra here. It's surprising, right? So it's all inspiring, all of this in this time. Like, I'm thinking all this time that the creativity is coming from the sacral chakra, and to find that it actually is housed here in the throat chakra, right? The music that we think of, that we put to, sound. When we're talking about writing out lyrics, right? We're talking about thinking of the melodies and the harmonies, and every part of that process is actually coming from here, not from the sacral. So interesting. Wow. And for writers, people that write well often have healthy chakras because they're constantly writing, and that is almost like exercising the throat chakra constantly. So they're constantly using that part of the energy system. Now, a blocked throat chakra can sometimes reveal itself with writer's block. So if for some reason you can't write, it's the throat chakra that's blocked. So if you have a block to your writing, and that could be writing in general, it could also be music as well. It could be evidence of a blocked chakra in the throat area. In the same way, speaking uses spoken word symbols to represent things communicated, right? Writing, in turn, uses written word symbols to communicate those things, right? It's one and the same, just a different tool. And for those of us who are lovers of reading, right? I'm sure you can agree how vivid and powerful a book can be if written well. Or even if we just took a paragraph, how descriptive we can, find as just a simple paragraph. And so no matter how they're formed, words are like our actual staircase to the mind. Words are like, which are produced here, is like a staircase to the mind. Or in many ways, it could be like an elevator, however you want to think of that. It leads us somewhere, right? And writing helps us to climb there and be able to look around up there. And so writing, just like music, is an excellent therapy as well for both blocked chakras and overloaded chakras the same, in the throat chakra area. So if you find that your throat chakra does need work, or even if you just want to keep it healthy, right? Music and writing, okay? A little bit every day. And so now it's making so much sense why journaling is so important, right? See how that makes sense and that correlates? Putting the pieces together, right? And for those who love to journal or have made that commitment to journal regularly, to communicate and release what you do and how you feel, like you're already 10 steps ahead of the game. And then there are those who might prefer, to even just write stories or poetry, or maybe an autobiography, right? A story telling your truth, however that writing happens, it's all useful. Now, of course, words do give life. Understand that. Whether they're spoken or written, words give life. And so use your wand wisely. And as much as just, putting the pen to the paper and letting your fingers just basically do the work, or even if you're just typing and putting those symbols together and compounding words mentally and outwardly and sending them out of your body, it's all keeping the throat chakra healthy. And so with that, I'll just say to use your wand wisely. That's what I'm getting at the end of this. Use your wand wisely. Thank you, Spirit.